Battle Blaze awkwardly launched itself onto your Super NES back in 1994. Developed and published by Sammy Studios, Battle Blaze originally started out as a Japanese-only arcade game, but was then ported over to the Super NES to try and take advantage of the sudden popularity of fighting games that erupted with Street Fighter II's release. Well, that was the plan anyway. Amazingly, due to constant delays and Sammy's US office moving to another state, Battle Blaze didn't make it out onto the Super NES until 1994, years after Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat had all but monopolized the fighting game market. But was it worth the wait, or was Battle Blaze just too little too late for Sammy Studios? Well, grab your favorite broadsword and loincloth, because we're about to see if Battle Blaze can slice up the competition. Start up Battle Blaze, and if you can manage to sit at the title screen for way longer than anyone ever would, you're treated to a brief cinematic that explains the story behind why everyone's fighting each other. Something about a demon that possesses the most powerful combatants in the land and then forces them to fight each other in a tournament. Carol, the character you play as, watches as his father defeats the Phantom trying to possess him, but then dies in the process, and vows to avenge him by winning the tournament in his stead. It's your bog standard needless fighting game plot, but I mean, at least it's in there. If the slow text scroll hasn't put you to sleep by now, go ahead and press start, where you get to choose from what amounts to being a single-player story mode or a versus mode. The story mode is essentially the meat of the game, so let's start there. Head into story mode and you're presented with a map on which you can choose your opponent. There are a total of 4 to choose, with a final boss fight appearing once you beat those 4. Yes, there are only a total of 6 characters in Battle Blaze. And to add insult to injury, you're stuck playing as the totally generic Conan wannabe Carol in story mode with no way to choose any other character unless you play versus mode. So just go ahead and choose which character you want to fight and get ready for battle. The actual fighting in Battle Blaze is, well, it's not very good. The overall movement of your character feels like he's underwater, and it doesn't help that the character you're stuck playing as is a lumbering mountain of muscle with a giant sword. You also know you're in for something special when a fighting game has jumping assigned to an actual face button, and not the fighting game standard of up on the D-pad, and Battle Blaze does just that. So get ready for some really awkward jumping attacks. You also get one single attack button besides the jump button, so don't go in thinking you're going to need to learn multiple punches and kicks, since your one attack button is responsible for literally every attack you can do in the game. Special moves are at least simple to pull off, with most being pressing the attack button while pressing left, right, up, or down on the D-pad, though none are really very impressive. It actually took me a few minutes to realize I was doing the special move and not the regular attack, since most of the special moves just kind of look like normal attacks anyway. Only a couple of characters in the game seem to even have projectile attacks, and of course your character isn't one of them. Thankfully, pressing back to block is in the game, but only seems to work when it wants to. Sometimes you can block just fine, and other times you'll take a hit even if you were pressing back to block the entire time. This leads to some incredibly annoying matches that, when combined with some of the cheapest AI ever seen in a fighting game, makes the story mode a really bad time. Even dragging your friend into the laughably simple versus mode can't save the game. In this mode, you do at least get all 6 characters to choose from, and then you're tossed into a coliseum to do battle in. At the very least, it's fun to try out some of the other characters here, but none are much more interesting to use than the default character due to the aforementioned boring special moveset that each character has. Some of the characters do have cool ideas, like this guy that can turn into a dog, or this standard anime guy that uses a sword that's way too big. But it plays so badly that few people would ever stick around long enough to even try to get good at a character. Unfortunately, there's just not much fun to be had here, in story mode or versus mode. Battle Blaze's gameplay is too simple, and yet somehow too frustrating at the same time, and it never comes together at all. When Battle Blaze originally hit the Japanese arcades in 1992, it could have gotten by as simply being an early fighting game in a time when fighting games were still trying to figure out what it takes to make something that was fun to play. But by the time Battle Blaze hit the Super NES in 1994, the time for excuses was long gone. And for us in the US that had no clue that a Battle Blaze arcade game even existed, this looked like a brand new fighting game that was out to compete with the likes of Super Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat II. Sadly though, this was just the same bare-bones fighting game from 1992 that had long since been outdated on consoles, and ultimately got lost in a sea of bad fighting games that were out at the time. Sammy Studios should have just cut their losses, tossed Battle Blaze to the side, and focused on putting out a better game. But sadly, that's just not what happened. And we got stuck with an ancient fighting game that was looking dated nearly 2 years before it was even released here. So if you're looking for an obscure Super NES fighting game to try, you have way better options than Battle Blaze. If you see it out somewhere and think you may have somehow missed out on an obscure gem, just go ahead and put it back down, since Battle Blaze is about as old and worn out as an ogre's loincloth.